My name is Justin Jeffery, Solutions Architect at IP Fabric, and today we're going to show off the new integration, the IP Fabric Nornir package. So first, let's take a look at Nornir. It's an automation framework written in Python to be used with Python. So unlike Ansible, where you have to create playbooks and YAML files, you use Nornir directly in your Python scripts. The IP Fabric Nornir package can be installed via pip. It was originally developed by John Paulo, which is Nornir_IP Fabric, so special thanks to him. We decided to fork the package in order for us to officially support it and provide you a space where you can open issues directly into our GitLab. If you have any bugs or feature requests, you can come in here, or you can email your solutions architect. Today we will also be using the Python IP Fabric package. So if you go to our blog and search Python, there is part 2 Python, which uses the SDK, and we will also be configuring webhooks, so it would be useful to look at this blog post. So let's go ahead and get started. So here's our IP Fabric dashboard. The first thing we do is have to configure some settings. So we will need an API token, the role should be limited to what you need. However, since this is just a demo, I'm just going to use the admin. This token is auto-generated by IP Fabric, so you need to make sure you copy it before pressing OK. And we're going to put this into our environment file. Next, we're going to configure a webhook. The URL is going to be, for this example, this IP address. We're going to use port 8000 and /IP Fabric. Since this is just a demo, we won't be using HTTPS. However, it is recommended to configure that. And we will only need intent verification events. If we press the show help, this is what the event message will look like once it's triggered. So when calculations of intent rules start or complete, it will send this message. It will also say the requester. So we're going to actually filter on snapshot discovery. So every time a discovery snapshot completes, that will be the requester. Then we're going to press create, and this is a secret. So we're going to copy the secret and put it into our IPF secret variable. Press OK. And finally, we need the URL of our IP Fabric instance. So if we look at our environment file, we have the secret, the URL, the token. Net user is the username to log into the device, and net password is the password. Some optional variables, IPF verify, so if you're using a self-signed certificate, you would set this to false. And net enable is enabled secret password. You can leave that out. It will default to the device password. And finally, there is the IPF test. So I am actually going to change that to true, because we'll see that being used later in our example. So let's take a quick look at the web server that's running. So this is running Fast API. Basically, it gets an event that comes in. It verifies it's coming from IP Fabric using that secret. If we enable the test, it will process the event and send it to a background test. Now if we go to our automation, this is the process event. So if it is an intent verification that is completed by snapshot discover, we will run the automation. Also, if it is a test event and we enable that, we will also do the automation using the last snapshot. For demo purposes, I'm going to filter on this one site to make it a little quicker. So if we come back to IP Fabric, we can add an attribute filter of site name. That way we can just see the information in the tables we will be using. I'm going to just update some variables in order for the program to work correctly. And finally, what the automation is going to do. So this automation will perform 3 different steps. The first step is actually coming to the save config consistency table. This is showing if the running config matches the startup config. So we can see this device has been saved, however this one has not. So it will kick off a copy run start. That way, if the device reloads, we will have the correct configuration. The next automation that's going to happen is going to be checking if Telnet is enabled. So there are 2 places where we can find that management Telnet access. So we can see these 2 devices, but since we're actually going to be changing the configuration, we're going to be using AAA lines. Here we can see on device 14, VTY 0 through 4 allows Telnet and SSH, and on device 13, VTY 0 through 2 allows Telnet and SSH, however 3 and 4 does not. And finally, we're going to check for SNMP communities that match public and remove those from the config. So now if we go back to our automation in code, let's take a look what happens. So if the intent matches our requirements, we're going to connect to IP Fabric, set the attribute filter for this demo. Then we're going to initialize our Nornir using the IP Fabric inventory plugin. We're going to be using the Nornir NetMiko package to actually connect to the devices. So there are several ways you can communicate to devices using NetMiko, Napalm, Paramiko, for example. Then we're going to save the config for those that aren't saved. We're going to check for Telnet and check for SNMP. So let's take a look how this works. Save config. So what we're going to do is check the table. If it matches change, we're going to filter on those devices. And then we're going to run the NetMiko save config command. Next, we're going to check for Telnet. So we're going to use the AAA lines. If any of the transports equal Telnet, we're going to create a dictionary. So 0, for example, we had 0 through 4 and 0 through 2. Those would be running different commands. And then we're going to run it against those devices. Finally, we're going to check SNMP. So using that same table, we're going to look if it equals a case insensitive equals public, and then disable the community by using the no SNMP server command. So now that we have all that information, let's log into my server. And we're going to start the web server using UVcorn, and we're going to, so it's always recommended to use virtual environments. So let me activate that real quick. So now we can actually run the server. So here you can see it started and it's running on port 8000, which we had set up in the webhook. So now if we go to our IP Fabric instance again and go into our settings, integration, webhooks, there is this test function. So since we set IPF test to true, when we actually run this automation, it is going to go and send the request and it will process that event. So let's press the test. Here we can see that we received the message. We're initializing the IP Fabric client, filtering on the devices, and now we're running all the automation. So let's take a look at what just happened. So device 13 had a running config different from startups, so we did a write memory, disable telnet. So device 14, we changed line VTY04 just to transport input SSH and save that config. Then on device 13, we had only VTY 0 through 2 with telnet, so we changed that and saved it again. Similarly with device 14, we had an uppercase public, so we disabled that. And on device 13, we had lowercase public. So the way this actually has been defined, if there was multiple devices, for instance, if two devices had lowercase public, it would do those in a single event. So we are running any command based on the serial number found in IP Fabric to disable the public against a list of hosts. And just for some documentation purposes, let's take a look at the code real quick. We come back to our GitLab repository, or in PyPy, the README is also located there. You can see we install it. We require an IP Fabric instance that you connect to. Here are the requirements for the Nornir plugin. You need a URL, a token, or you can use username and password, but it's recommended to use tokens. There are sample environment files that you can just copy and edit. So there are a couple ways to run. You can initialize using the init Nornir command. You can actually pass it some more variables. So instead of using the environment file, you can put the base URL and token directly into the options. Or you can even use a YAML file. and then initialize with the config file and the IP Fabric inventory plugin. So I want to thank you for joining today. All this code can be found in our GitLab repository, and we'll provide links as well. We have marketing examples. So under webinars, you will see the IP Fabric Nornir repo with all the automation that we performed today. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me or your solutions architect, and have a great day. Thank you.